Alright, so remember the rules of horror movies. Number one, you can't have sex, you can't get down, you can't get froggy style. Number two, no drinks, no alcohols, no beverages. And number three, which is most important, never say you'll be back because you won't come back, right? Okay, I gotta stop emulating my Randy Meeks here. We are here live talking about Scream 2022, or Scream the next one, which should be aptly the subtitle for this, because I don't understand why they always go back and they make these requels and they decide, hey, let's just call it the name of the original with no subtitle, with no numerical, and let's just go from there. But you know, I know there's a reason they do this in the movie, and they kind of poke fun at it as well, so I can't be too mad at it. Anyway, I am here, people, and we're gonna give our movie review of this. I seen this in the theaters like a couple of days ago. I rewatched it yet again, and let's get into some non-spoiler thoughts here. I will have spoilers at the end of the video, so you will get a warning once that is initiated. Anyway, Scream 2022 started out as a fan project, a love letter to Wes Craven. Even the directors, they say this is for Wes. This is what Wes would have probably liked. We're doing this to continue this and honor his memory. And I respect that. I respect Radio Silence for going out of their way to try to make something that's like kind of a hard task, because you have like a pre-established fan base and you got to do things right. You got to set the wheels in motion for this movie. So there was a lot to live up to. There was a lot of hype, a lot of excitement from the initial trailers, and I must say, after seeing the film, I can understand why there was some skepticism, but I trust in Radio Silence. I think they did a terrific job so far with Scream 2022. They nailed some of the bells and whistles of the formula, which is, you know, all the meta humor. Scream and meta humor go together like peanut butter and chocolate. So when you go from one director who has unfortunately passed away to a new slew of directors, usually when people think about this, something gets lost in translation, and thank God they kept the meta humor prevalent in Scream 2022. It's really good, sharply written, a lot of good jokes in there too, and of course, you know, Ghostface is the most methodical, he's the most sort of vicious that he's ever been in this entire franchise. I'm talking people getting gutted, people getting stabbed through the neck. It was 100% just gruesome, constant stabbings over and over. Now, there was some argument that there wasn't too much variety in some of the kills, and I honestly think that this is true. Like, there is variety of ways you can cut people's heads off, or maybe put pipes in their face like Scream 2 did. However, this is what Ghostface does. He stabs people quite a lot, and then he calls it a day. Sometimes he might clean his blade a little bit with the sound of red right hand going off in the background. And that's another thing too, like the references to the previous Scream movies and the respect and the themes. Like you hear Dewey's theme and you hear red right hand and you hear all this stuff. They call back a lot to the previous movies due to this being a requel. And if you don't understand what a requel is, it is basically the concept of a reboot sequel that they sort of poke fun at with the meta humor in this movie. They're going back to the origins, back to the beginning, and then when it's all connected to the past, that is the brunt of the storyline. Was it done well? I would say, you know, there are some bumpy roads here or there, but for the most part, you know, tying in a lot of the courtesy from the previous films, you're gonna really respect that as a Scream fan. You're gonna really like notice everything that they do here and appreciate the sort of oil on the wheels. And I really like love this stuff for the most part. Some of it is goofy, which I cannot spoil in this section, unfortunately. There are some goofy things that they pull off, but I think to the benefit of the movie and the fan service that they are providing, you're going to be perfectly content as a Scream fan behind it. There can be those moments where the meta humor sort of feels a little bit too on the nose nose despite being well written. So let me set up a scenario. Let's do this song and dance as to not spoil the film in the non-spoiler section. So there is characters where they are like very self-aware of themselves being in like a horror film and following the horror conventions that were set up in the trailer. Like Dewey talks to them about the rules of survival, and that sort of migrated into the main film. Now there are times where it's like a little bit too excessive. It's like, okay dude, I get it, you don't go by yourself, you don't go have sex, you don't go do drugs, I get it. It feels like times where the subtlety is sort of knocked away with the hammer when it comes to the requel meta narrative. And like I said, it fits the purpose of the movie in terms of the plot, and it is well done, it is well produced. However, I just feel like the character's constantly reminding me every 2 seconds. It's like, I know the situation you're in, I know the rules you're following, I know rules are meant to be broken in Scream. I just felt like it dragged on a little bit too much, especially in the third act. And there are times where it's made to be funny because there's like some characterization and some lines put in where they clearly point out the structure of the movie, which I can't go into details, but it's like all there. You might chuckle once in a while, but like I said, there are times where you might feel annoyed by this premise, and I perfectly understand people who feel this way. The risk that this movie takes is definitely one for the ages. I'm talking about character deaths, I'm talking about shocking twists, I'm talking about like differing motivations, setups for potential sequels down the works, because you know, when one movie is successful enough, like the original Scream, there are some people that still stay alive in the notion, and I thought they took some very bold risks and some very hard swings, and I think they paid off. If you're coming in expecting this to be something where like all the characters are like living at the end, then you know you're not gonna get that. The best way to sum it up is that for being a requel, a reboot sequel in a technical sense, they still subvert your expectations just enough to keep you on edge and make you think like, oh shit, this person's gonna die, or oh fuck man, I don't really understand what's going on, but maybe this potential person, this suspect here, this person on my list that's been like part of the misdirection of the movie, maybe they aren't the killer after all. So they kind of like fuck with you a lot in the film, where you start thinking like, am I really correct in my assumption? Is this really good? Is this really like my case? It's a mystery of who done it. Maybe if they're making it like clearly obvious, I could be somewhat ill-advised in my assumption. That's what they do, and I really love it. And you don't know who's gonna live or die. Did the trailer give away like way too much? I would say a little bit, yeah. If you watch the trailers initially, and if you could piece together some things, you might get it right. But in terms of the killer, I did not expect anything to happen of that magnitude from the trailers alone, and that was cool. Like I could not tell who the killer was from the initial trailers, and the movie misdirected everything in those trailers so far, to the point where there's even some cut content. Like there's some cut stuff in the trailers that didn't make it into the full film, and if it wasn't the full film, it was made fun of and it subverted your expectations. In terms of motivation, I don't know how much I can get into with that, but I will say, first and foremost, the killer motivation is something you see on a daily basis if you search hard enough, and if there's a bird flying in the sky, maybe that bird is actually on a device somewhere, someplace. You'll find there's some motivation to be had, and that's all I'm gonna say. I loved this movie. Like Jesus, I can't stress it enough. Like I really enjoyed this movie. The negatives are very minor, but the positives still like outweigh it to a sense. I think if you're going into this movie expecting it to be equivalent to something that Wes would make, you would be severely surprised and you would be also content with the experience. I will say that there's also some other things that they could have did well, like maybe utilize some characters a little bit more. You'll feel like there are some characters that get sort of sidelined for others, but when they try to shine a spotlight on the people that matter the most in this movie, they mostly succeed, especially with some of the legacy characters and some of the characters that you don't expect to be protagonists, but they ultimately end up being protagonists. The killers are dicks, but you understand the motivation, where it's coming from. It's definitely clear cut. It doesn't feel too wonky, but it is a bit wonky, and like I said, I'll save that for later. You're gonna have like some small conflicting emotions on top of a well-made movie because they do things to shake it up. I remember the director interviews, and I was actually in the Discord when they were talking about this movie, and they were saying, you know, we're going to shake shit up, we're going to take the formula and do the best we can, and we're going to make the best Scream movie we could possibly make. It's a tight 2 hours, but those 2 hours like flew right past. No fat, no filler, in my opinion. People are saying the movie dragged a little bit for them somewhere in the middle, but in order to give like characterization, I think the characters talking and interacting a bit, and you know, you sort of suspect this guy or that person or this person, this girl, that girl, this guy, and you never really, you know, stay lost in the conversation. It's always coming up regardless, even if I had that problem of them doing the whole meta thing a little bit too much for my taste. And I just like how the original did it and how the subtlety in that movie felt great throughout. You know, even if that movie was like also super tight on pacing, it just goes by. This one sort of lacks that same sort of substance, but as a sequel to any of the Scream films, this is fantastic. I ranked it before. I think I said at the top is Scream 1. That movie is legendary. The commentary, what it set up, what it did first, because they even make fun of that in the film too. Like, never fuck with the original. That's what they don't do with this film. They don't fuck with the original. They just take the premise of it as a requel and they decide, hey, what can we do to obviously add things and add our own twists and put references here or there. Fucking with the original is like sacred ground, man. That's how it goes, and they know this. So Scream 1, that's at the top, and then this movie, this is number 2. This is the best sequel in my opinion so far for any of the Scream movies. Kept me engaged throughout. And then we move on to the bottom, which is under this movie, and I would say that's probably gonna be Scream 2. I enjoy Scream 2. It was a bit sloppy on some sections, and I hated that cafeteria singing scene. Oh, I think I love you. I fucking hate that scene. I hate it to pieces. I wish I could scrape it from my memory, but you know, still had some good kills, had some good revelations. I still like Scream 2 for what it was. Then under that is Scream 4. Now it feels like by the numbers at that point, still they try to do like a lot of interesting things. I like the meta commentary in that movie and the fact that people were getting into the camcording craze. You know, it's like stuff has to be like on video and recorded and sensationalized, and I like how that movie sort of got on that immediately. Still though, I feel like the stakes in Scream 4 weren't that prevalent compared to the later sequels. They weren't like that entertaining, and some of the characters like just go through the motions, like I said, with no real like super development. Like Super Sydney is still Super Sydney. She's like that in some of these movies as well, but still, like, I just felt like everyone was gonna live at a certain point, and the risks that they took really didn't stand out compared to Scream 2022. And then we go to the bottom tier, which is Scream 3. I hate this movie. I heard there was studio interference, and it definitely showed in Scream 3 because the movie has no idea what it wants to be at all. Super meta trilogy ender, or does it want to be a comedy because you got a black guy running on a rug and then Ghostface pulls the rug under him and he's like, oh, you motherfucker, and it's like what the is happening? Like, the kills were lame too in Scream 3. I can't remember a single kill other than the fact that they decided to kill Cotton Weary in the beginning. That's it. I don't remember much from this movie, and Scream should not be unmemorable. Like, this should not be the focus of Scream. It should not be a boring, trite movie, you know what I'm saying? But that's what Scream 3 was, and that's why it's low on my list. I also felt like the tension was lame. You shouldn't be going to like a 9th Street hooker in a horror movie and getting all the tension sucked out, because this is not what Scream does. Like, I wish they went back to the drawing board. Obviously, it's very unfortunate that there was some school shootings or whatever from what I heard. I'm not sure if this was dealing with the Columbine incident and the original idea that Stu was going to go to a school and stab people up, but apparently there was some school involved and they didn't want to take the risk with the studio, so they decided to change the script entirely to be more centered on this idea that everyone ran into their stab counterparts, and it was so bad. Finally, this series is ranked for the most part, and I think the final criticism that I have for Scream 5 is that I felt like the third act was a little bit underwhelming. It wasn't as crazy as it could have been. Still good, still funny, still great, still some interesting tense moments that they tried to pull, just not as crazy as I thought it would be, and that would be spoiler territory. Overall, this movie is a giant love letter to Scream, to the fans, to Wes. I know you're staring up there in heaven, you freaking horror god. I know this was for Wes, and I think for what they tried to accomplish with this movie, not trying to outshine the original, but just delivering another very solid Scream sequel, I think it succeeded. I give this movie an 8 out of 10 for the most part, and I think you will enjoy it if you are a fan of the series, horror in general. You don't need the other movies to really understand this one. Just the legacy characters come back, you're gonna see them pop up like Gail, Dewey, and Sydney and say like, oh well, who are you? And to find that out, you need to watch the previous films. Outside of that, this focuses on a new generation, a new cast blending with the legacy characters, and I think they pulled that off rather well, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds for Scream. This is the final countdown for spoilers. Spoilers! We're about to talk about some spoilers here for Scream 2022. And if you don't want to be like spoiled to the movie, if you don't want to have everything ruined for you at this section, then please close out the video, enjoy my 8 out of 10 score. I'm going to explain why it's an 8 out of 10 and talk about the shocking details of the movie. I'm going to give you a countdown. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Spoiler time. So the first thing you're going to be sort of wondering in your head with how this movie starts is, you know, there is Tara in the beginning. She gets attacked by Ghostface, and then her sister Sam comes to see her in the hospital. Later on, we find out that big revelation that Sam is actually a bastard child of Billy Loomis, right? She was conceived by Billy illegitimately. He went out and cheated on Sydney, which makes sense. I thought that whole bit made sense right there, because once again, in the first movie, Sydney was not willing to sleep with Billy until the end, so he was getting like aggravated, and I could see him cheating on her and then going with like another girl in the process, that other girl being Samantha's mother. And I thought that was well done. I thought that tied brilliantly into the first movie. It's a lot of family ties, family bloodlines that they sort of reference in this movie. I think the Meeks, Chad Meeks Martin and Mindy Meeks are also related to Randy, like that's their uncle. So they have that characteristic of telling the meta meta of the story. Like, these are the rules in a horror movie that you don't do. These are the rules that you have to abide by at all times. And it's sort of like push and pull with those characters. And I really appreciated that. I appreciated the fact that they survived as well. I thought that was cool. And then you have family ties with like Stu, and Vince and Stu are related. Although I feel this falls into some of the criticism I had with the underutilization of the characters. Vince just gets poked in the neck and that's it. Like, nothing interesting is done with that character. Initially they were going to do this entire like set piece with Vince being killed, but no, he gets poked in the neck. He has an argument with like Chad Meeks Martin over Liv, because Liv was his ex-girlfriend or something, or they were somehow involved, and he started stalking her on Instagram. It just is a plot line that didn't go anywhere. There's also rampant arguments that this same underutilization falls on the legacy characters. I thought some of this is accurate, however it makes sense for the story and the situation. Sydney Prescott has kids. She is done with all this shit in Woodsboro, so it makes sense to sort of put her on the back burner and say, hey, I'm looking after my kids, I got a life now, I moved on with Mark, which is the character, the detective from Scream 3, and I'm living a peaceful, normal life, not looking over my shoulder anymore. And then Gail is like part of a giant news anchor firm. You know, she's done with this too. She's like trying to move on with her career. And then Dewey is the one that ran away from everything, but he has the best character arc of these three legacy characters, because you can resonate with the downtrodden attitude that he has, and he's the one trying to help the new legacy survive while the other two have moved on. It kind of makes sense, and they kind of propagate that for his character. It's just unfortunate that you don't see Sydney or Gail a lot until the end, and we have to get to the big twist, or the big knife going into Dewey's back and going into Dewey's stomach with a double knife stab as he gets slitted upwards, because Dewey dies in this movie in the worst way possible. And they also took that kill from Ghostface being in COD. That's like one of his animations in Call of Duty when he was introduced in that game, and that was kind of cool as a reference. It's just done like slower and methodical, and Dewey sees the picture of Gale on the phone once he's killed, and I thought that was a big shocking moment. I'm also not surprised by it, because you would figure that Dewey would be killed in this series eventually. It was a matter of time, and if they were going to kill someone, it was going to be him. It wasn't going to be Super Sydney. That wasn't happening. It was going to be him, because there were so many times where Dewey got stabbed. As he said, I got stabbed 9 times. I have permanent nerve damage. There were times they wanted to kill the character, but Wes said no. And it just felt inevitable for a fitting end to his character. You know, it's an honor. That line is repeated to him when Ghostface stabs him, and I like the tension of that scene too, where you think, you know, once he's stabbed in the stomach, you think, Dewey has been stabbed before, he might survive that, you know, it's all cool. Stabbed in the back, oh man, you know, he had that little permanent nerve damage walk. I mean, a little bit. I'm trying to think of that line from Dawn of the Dead. We got a twitcher in the building. It might be something like that. And then when the knife goes like upwards and all the guts spill out on the floor, you realize that, oh shit, they're doing it. They're actually killing off one of these characters who you would deem as immortal up until this point. I know people have said they think it's dumb that Amber, a short little tiny person, killed Dewey, but I kind of have a defense for that. You have to understand that also Jill was Ghostface in Scream 4, and she probably looked tall as fuck. I know there was 2 killers in Scream 4 as well, but that's how it goes. I don't get the logic behind it. Like, why is this small person the size of like Stu Macher? But whatever, they went with it. But it happened before in the series. And also, they are kind of thrown off on the fact that Dewey turned around to answer his phone. I mean, Dewey has broken rules before. This character's not a super smart character when you really think about it. So him looking at his phone and being distracted with Ghostface, I mean, yeah, you could say it's a little bit dumb, but Dewey hasn't been the sharpest knife in the drawer for the entire series. Like, there was one time where he was shooting Ghostface, I think it was Scream 3, and he fell down a hill, and I was like, dude, like, what? I was like, come on, like, you fall forward completely down a hill. I don't know, fam. Either way, I thought it was a respectful send-off for that character, and that is the catalyst of sending Sydney and Gil back to Woodsboro. Totally, it makes sense. Tonally, it makes sense. And Gil is there for revenge, man, and she's crying. And Courtney Cox, you just feel it. Like, he's gone. They took a risk, and you feel that emotion too. They have to get the gears going. It's a horror movie. It's a horror series. Not all the characters survive from the previous entries. I watched all the Friday movies. They were killing some of the main characters in the sequels left and right. So it was a no-brainer for Scream for them to do this. The only thing I can say that's kind of weird is seeing Dewey break Randy's rules when he's so like preachy about it in the beginning of the movie. But like I said, Dewey's the best character in this movie. I just wish we got more time with him. I wish that they like gave us something really great and then they took it away, but it hurts, man. You feel that hurt, and that is the context behind his death. Sam, despite being the daughter of Billy Loomis, was okay, and I guess we have to talk about the fact that we see Skeet Ulrich, Skeet. We see Skeet return as Billy Loomis, but de-aged. At first, it looked kind of weird because I'm like, hold on, I don't know, it doesn't look quite the same as the original, but that's what you do with de-aging. I think the people that did de-aging well is people like Marvel, you know, Marvel Studios, where it looks almost immaculate, man. But this is like just decent. And him popping up in Samantha's head and sort of preaching, saying, you know, we gotta cut some fucking throats. I thought that was awesome. Like, I know people hate this. They don't like the fact that people are talking to these characters and they can't see them, or they can't witness or fathom what's going on. But I mean, come on, it's fan service. It's nice little fan service. I can deal with that. It wasn't that bad to me, to be honest, and it gave another dynamic of the character fighting her past, because once again, daughter of a serial killer, you don't fuck with the daughter of a serial killer. I know subtlety is preferable, but still, I can let that little bit of fan service slide. Then we have like all the other stuff, so we're gonna get into it here. What did I forget? I know I forgot something. Oh yes, the killer reveal, it being Richie and Amber. Now, I thought the message was fine for, you know, conveying the fact that this is all about toxic fandom. It's totally relevant in 2022. That's what I was saying in the non-spoiler review. You see these assholes on forums day in, day out, like giving death threats to directors or going super ham about a franchise, saying that, hey, you know, this whole thing is shit. I can't just break away, move on. I gotta do something about this. We gotta take this back. We gotta put this back in the hands of the fan base. I thought that was clever. I thought that was well done from the people that did Ready or Not. And that was also like a super meta movie from what I heard from my friends. That being said, the motive could have been a little bit crazier if Stu came back into the mix. I mean, if you're going back to everything, then why not bring back a legacy villain who you made an Easter egg about if he's really alive or dead from that TV crashing on his face? Like, that would have been a good opportunity to introduce maybe the toxic fandom element, and then bring back the classic Stu Macher Ghostface saying, you know what, all you kids doing all this shit, I'm gonna show you how to do it right, and maybe try to convince Sam, Melissa Barrera's character, to be on his side. You know what I mean? Because she is the daughter of Billy Loomis. I feel like that could have added a bigger dynamic to the movie, and that would have been truly an oh shit moment. When it came to Richie and Amber, I felt a little bit underwhelmed by that reveal because Dewey sort of points it out, but I do love how the movie sort of is smart. It's a very smart film, and the fact that you might not believe it near the end, like, oh shit, it's not the boyfriend that she just hooked up with. You know what I mean? Maybe Dewey is wrong because this guy is like, you know, he takes a bullet to the leg from Sydney, and all this stuff is set up where he seems to be the victim or whatever. There was that one part in the hospital where Ghostface knocked him out of the way, and that was like a little bit suspect, sure, maybe you could call that. But they started to play with it a little bit, saying, well, maybe it's not him after all. That's what I was thinking in the movie theaters. Then it turned out to be him. It was shocking, but it wasn't as crazy as something like Stu coming back. That would have been a little bit more sicker. As for the message on toxic fandom, I think it's perfect. I think it's great, actually. It was a great allegory to the entire movie, saying there might be people out here like this. Let's tackle this subject and see what happens. I know reactionaries, I know they're mad about it, and if you're getting mad about it, then that means the movie is speaking to you, and maybe you should lighten up a little bit. I mean, it's satire, it's humor. Get over it, right? Anyway, you know, like, I still enjoy what they tried to do for the most part, despite some small underwhelming aspects. I'm going on like almost 30 minutes here, so I want to just wrap up. You know, it's cool that the new characters live. Tara, Sam, you have the Meeks. Maybe that sets it up for another movie. Maybe Sydney could come back. I know Nev Campbell says she wants to come back. I know that Kirby Reed, the character from Scream 4 that was highly popular, Hayden Panettiere, they confirmed she lived. And then there's the theory of Stu Macher, so maybe it could break the conventions of a requel but bring in Stu Macher, and that would be like amazing, right? To see Matthew Lillard come back because he really loved that role, you know. And they teased it as well. Is this the real story of Stu Macher? Did he really die or not? That could be a thing. Maybe he's in hiding somewhere, who knows. Either way, that is all the spoilers done for the most part. I think this movie is brutal, man. They killed off Dewey, they killed off Judy Hicks and her son in the house as well, stabbed right to the neck, like gibbed right in there. Ooh, trachea fucking just. So this movie is fucking brutal, man, and that's what I like about it. It took risks, but at the same time, it could have been a little bit better in certain aspects. That's why it's not like a 10 out of 10 masterpiece in my opinion. It's like an 8 because there are some lingering issues with characterization and how they went about that. Overall though, sharp script, well written, great kills. I had fun. Two final things I want to address really quickly is the fact that Dead Meat is in this movie, like the YouTuber Dead Meat. I'm talking kill count guy. He's in this film with his girlfriend Chelsea Rebecca, and they start to riff on the stab movies, and I think Dead Meat is great. Such lovely contributions to the horror scene. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope he does like more great work in the future. I love Dead Meat. And then moving on to the reference of stab, we saw Ghostface with a metal mask and a flamethrower with no sleeves, and that's not like actually part of Scream. That's part of the Stab franchise. It kind of sucks that we don't see someone get flamethrower because that would have been kind of a cool kill, but you know, they kind of make fun of it and say that, hey, this is Ghostface now, no sleeves, he's ridiculous, metal mask, flamethrower, requel territory. They just made it dumber, and they made fun of themselves for putting that in, and I kind of like that. Even though it was a misdirect in the trailer, I kind of like that they actually added in more Stab lore instead of just going super serious and ignoring the fact that Stab, the self-parody inside of Scream, exists. That was cool. That was nice. I'm mad that someone didn't get killed by a flamethrower, but I understand why it was stupid to the Stab franchise and why Ghostface wielding around two swords with no sleeves like he's a fucking ninja really is dumb. And if they would have did that for the actual Scream storyline, I would have busted out laughing, to be honest. So be sure to like this video if you really care about Scream, or if you really care about me, the content creator, for putting out this work for you guys. I know it's been a long ramble. I just wanted to get all my thoughts illustrated about this movie in the spoiler section. I'm probably missing some stuff. That's overall how I feel about this film. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, understood where I was coming from. Add in your own 2 cents in the comment section below. Check me out on social media in the description below, and I will talk to you guys soon. Be sure to not sleep with any of the killers, so to speak, because you never know when Ghostface is gonna gut you next. I will see you guys next time. Later.
Oh, stop. Wait. There's certain rules to surviving.
The attacks were all on people related to the original killers.
Whatever his link is to our past, it's pulled us all back here. And I won't sleep until he's in the ground.